Welcome back. Scours is the most common disease among newborn calves. It can be mentally, physically, and financially draining on ranchers to endure a Scours outbreak. Intervet Shearing Plow Animal Health is working hard to ensure calves start healthy and stay healthy. Reporter Dave Russell heads to Alliance, Nebraska to see how minimizing a calf's exposure to pathogens and maximizing its immune response can prevent an outbreak.
Success in producing and raising healthy, profitable calves hinges on a good start.
For cow-calf producers, their whole profit structure is based on calves. I mean, that's what they have to sell, and so having live calves, getting calves off to a good start is really critical to their success. So in the first 30 to 60 days, the major problem or challenge that these calves face is scours.
Scours, or neonatal diarrhea, is an infection that destroys the lining of the gut, causing the calf to become dehydrated and unable to absorb vital nutrients. Once an outbreak has occurred, treating scours is not an easy task.
One of the reasons it's difficult is because a lot of times we're dealing with viruses, and so our typical antibiotic-based therapies are not going to have any effect on viruses. The calves, the major problem they face is that they dehydrate quickly, they lose a lot of fluids, and so the main treatment is aimed at trying to restore those fluids. So that can be done early on by tubing the calves with electrolytes for more severely dehydrated calves, and we'll put in an IV. It's a pretty labor-intensive kind of deal.
In addition to a labor-intensive treatment process, calf scours can take an emotional and financial toll on a rancher.
It's their job to get these babies started and keep them alive, just like your own kids, really, and so they take it seriously, and it's pretty hard on them when it's failing. When you get a bunch of calves getting sick, all of a sudden your workload doubles or triples. Everybody's working overtime, and so just, emotionally and stress, it takes a big toll. Financially, you've got the cost of treatment, the cost of calves that die that are not going to be there when it comes time to sell. So even the survivors of a scours outbreak, can have some permanent damage there, so they don't absorb nutrients as efficiently, so they fall behind. They don't gain weight as fast, and so there's several studies that have documented that calves that have had scours compared to calves that don't are going to be 20 to 30 pounds lighter at weaning.
The viruses and bacteria that cause scours are primarily contracted through manure.
Anywhere you have manure and mud and water to kind of help mobilize those bacteria, that's where they're going to get it. So one good way to pick it up is off the teats. When they go to nurse, if that cow's udder is dirty and it's got mud and manure on it, then they're going to get a nice dose of bacteria that way. Or if they search around eating little hay and things off the ground, they'll pick it up that way. As a few animals in the herd get sick, then they start shedding much greater numbers of the bacteria or the virus into the environment, and so that tends to have a snowball effect, and more get sick.
When winter weather conditions are harsh, cows and heifers are often forced into a small area to be watched. This concentrates the amount of manure, making scours even easier to contract. Dave Sturkle, manager of Snake Creek Ranch in Alliance, Nebraska, knows the challenges this kind of situation can have.
This morning's just typical morning. It was 0 degrees when the sun came up, and so everything that we calved through the barn. We want to keep the barn clean and dry, but that's a perfect world, and we don't always live in a perfect world. If you're having a lot of calves, it's hard to get the barn as clean as you want. And the exposure to the manure is higher than what it would be out on grass, but calving them cattle in February, it's just impossible to have enough grass range to calve on and still close enough to the barn that you can help them calves when it's cold.
Even when dealing with less than perfect conditions, Dr. Hill says there are ways to minimize exposure. First, don't overcrowd your calving cows. If you calve in a barn, be sure it's as clean as possible. And take into consideration using something like the Sandhills calving system to ensure you are continually moving to clean calving ground in order to avoid pathogen and manure buildup.
There's a system called the Sandhills calving system developed in Sandhills in Nebraska, where you take your main cow herd, you calve in pasture number 1 for a week or 10 days, and then you leave the cows that have calved with their babies there, and everybody else moves on to the next clean pasture. They calve there for a week or 10 days, and same thing, those that haven't calved move on to clean pasture. One important thing we've learned is that those older calves become the primary source or reservoir of infection. So keeping some distance between the oldest and the youngest is an important strategy.
However, minimizing exposure to manure is only half the battle. Maximizing the calves' immunity against scours causing pathogens is critical. Since calves are born with no immunity, ensuring consumption of good quality colostrum to build up the calves' immunity level against these pathogens is critical.
The immunity of a calf is important because essentially they're born without any immunity, okay? With human babies, there's a transfer of antibodies through the blood, and so when a baby's born, he has a nice level of immunities from its mother. Calf's not that way at all. It gets no transfer through the blood, so everything that calf gets has got to come through colostrum, or through that first milk, okay? So in order for that to happen effectively, that calf's got to get up after it's born, get to its mother, and have a good full meal of colostrum. And in that colostrum, then there's concentrated levels of antibodies that cow has produced, transfers them to the calf. We call it passive transfer.
Timing of colostrum consumption is critical. Only 12 hours after birth, the calf's ability to absorb protective antibodies from the colostrum drops below 50%. So the sooner the calf can nurse and obtain colostrum, the better. And vaccinating the cow early enough to establish good levels of protective antibodies in the colostrum is important.
By vaccinating the cow, we stimulate the cow then to produce higher levels of antibodies, and those antibodies then again concentrate in the colostrum. So that's how vaccinating the cow eventually helps protect the calf. A good timing is to vaccinate the cow about 7 to 8 weeks prior to calving. Then by 5 weeks, she's beginning to move antibodies into the milk, and everything works out great.
When choosing a scours vaccination program, producers should be sure it includes a wide range of protection.
A good scours vaccine should cover the breadth of viruses and bacteria that are important, that we know are causes of scours. And so there are several strains of the coronaviruses, the rotaviruses, E. coli, Clostridium bacteria, or some of those. So they need to have the breadth of coverage in a vaccine.
And new technology in vaccine manufacturing allows the animals to develop a more targeted, longer-lasting immune response.
One of the most important features of new vaccines that have come on the market in the last 4 or 5 years is what we call subunit technology. And it refers to the E. coli antigen in the vaccines. This little model helps illustrate what we're doing. Older vaccines that use whole cell technology just take the whole cell and put it in the vaccine. The bad part about that is that cell wall is made up of endotoxins, and the less endotoxin we have in the vaccine, the fewer reactions, bad events, lumps and bumps we're going to have from the vaccine. So the newer technology called subunit, we just take the pili here, these little hair-like projections, and put them in the vaccine, throw the rest of the cell away. It allows us to get a more focused, more targeted immune response.
Dr. Hill says that a scours vaccination program should be a consistent element of your cow-calf health protocol, especially when cash flow is tight.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and in this case, a pile of money, because scours are so difficult to treat. Some of these pathogens cause sudden death. You don't get a chance to treat them. The viruses don't respond well to treatment. So it's it's a very important thing to keep in place.
It's like going through life without health insurance. I mean, it's pay me now or pay me later. I can't begin to fathom what a 30 or 40 or 50% infected herd of scours would cost your bottom line.
At the end of the day, Dave says a good scours vaccination program gives his calves the advantage he's looking for.
It's just a step up for Mother Nature, and when you have that storm and your ground gets wet, even on the Sandhills method, you know, they're challenged with weather as we are. It's just going to give you a leg up for the duration of the season with that calf.
In Alliance, Nebraska, I'm Dave Russell, reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
As calving season approaches, remember the two things to keep in mind for successful calf scours prevention are to minimize exposure to pathogens and maximize the calf's immune response by improving the cow's antibody production level and colostrum delivery. This segment was brought to you by our friends at Intervet Shearing Plow Animal Health, a research-driven company that develops, manufactures, and markets a broad range of veterinary medicines, including Guardian, the most complete scours protection vaccine. For more information, you can visit GuardianVaccine.com or CattlemenToCattlemen.org.